They mocked the bride for marrying a poor man, until he revealed he was a disguised billionaire. Catherine Harrison was facing the most important moment of her life while hearing cruel laughter echo through the church. The people she considered friends, her own family. Everyone looked with contempt at the man by her side, but no one imagined what was about to happen at that altar. The man everyone despised held a secret that would change everything. And Catherine was seconds away from discovering a truth not even she herself knew. Just a few minutes earlier, she was in the small community hall next to the church, adjusting the simple veil she had bought with her own savings. Her mother, Martha, came through the door with her face red from crying so much. "There's still time to back out," the woman said, holding her daughter's hands tightly. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to lower yourself like this." Catherine felt a tightness in her chest. That wasn't the first time she had heard those words in recent weeks. Ever since she announced her engagement to Nathan, her life had become a hell of judgment. "Mum, I love Nathan," she replied with a firm voice, although inside she felt a tremble. That should be enough. "Love?" Martha released her daughter's hands as if she had been burned. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Catherine. Love doesn't put food on the table. That man is a janitor. You're a manager at an important company." The door opened again and Victoria, Catherine's younger sister, came in with a cruel smile on her lips. She was accompanied by the 3 bridesmaids Catherine had chosen, old college classmates who had accepted the invitation only to have a good reason to mock. "Ready for the big day?" Victoria asked with irony. Or rather, ready to become the city's laughingstock. "Victoria, don't start," Catherine pleaded, feeling tears threatening to fall. "I'm not starting anything. I'm just being realistic," her sister approached, examining Catherine's simple dress. "You know everyone out there is talking, right? That you're only doing this because you're pregnant." "I'm not pregnant," Catherine exclaimed, feeling her blood boil. "Then it's even worse," one of the bridesmaids, Ashley, said while fiddling with her cell phone. "It means you're really throwing your life away out of pure stupidity." The other 2 bridesmaids, Madison and Brianna, laughed softly. Catherine noticed Ashley was filming everything, probably to post on social media later. That made her stomach churn. "Did you come here just to humiliate me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We came because we're your friends," Madison replied, although her tone was anything but friendly. "And friends don't let friends make mistakes this big." "Nathan isn't a mistake," Catherine insisted, but her voice sounded less convincing than she would have liked. The truth was that she herself was still processing everything. She had met Nathan 3 years earlier, when he started working as a janitor at the office building where she managed the financial department of an import company. At first, she barely noticed his presence. He was just another cleaning worker, always arriving at dawn in simple clothes and carrying an old brown bag lunch. But then something happened that changed everything. One night, Catherine was working late, stressed about problems at the company. The numbers didn't add up and she knew she would be blamed if things went wrong. She was crying softly at her desk when she heard a gentle voice. "Sorry to bother you. Are you okay?" It was Nathan, holding a broom and looking at her with genuine concern. No one else in the office cared whether she was okay or not. Everyone was too busy protecting their own positions. From that day on, they started talking. Small conversations at first, just greetings. But little by little, Catherine realized that Nathan had a different kind of wisdom, a way of seeing the world that calmed her. He never judged her, never made demands. He just listened. Love grew slowly, like a plant that needs constant care. When they finally made their relationship official, Catherine didn't tell anyone at first. She knew exactly how people would react. But she couldn't hide it for long. "My daughter," Martha's voice brought her back to the present. "Have you thought about the future? How will you live with his salary?" "We'll manage," Catherine replied, but the uncertainty in her voice was evident. In truth, this was a point that bothered her. Nathan never talked about money. He just said everything was fine, that they'd live decently. But Catherine knew how much a janitor made, and the numbers weren't encouraging. Still, there was something about him that made it all worth it. The way he looked at her as if she were the most important person in the world. The way he held her hand, firm but gentle, the way he made her laugh even on the worst days. "You're wasting your life," Victoria insisted, crossing her arms. "You could have stayed with Preston. He actually had a future. Preston, the rich ex-boyfriend everyone in the family adored. Heir to a chain of stores, imported car, apartment on the Upper East Side. He was everything a family like hers hoped for their eldest daughter. But Preston was also controlling, arrogant, and treated Catherine like a trophy, not a person. "Preston never really loved me," Catherine said firmly. "And I didn't love him either." "But you would have had comfort," Martha argued. "Security, respect." "Respect?" Catherine felt anger rise in her chest. "He cheated on me, Mom. Did you know that?" The silence that followed was heavy. Martha looked away, and Victoria examined her nails as if it weren't important. "All men slip up sometimes," Martha finally said. "But that doesn't mean you should throw it all away." Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her own mother was defending cheating in the name of money and social status. That hurt more than any of the mockery she'd heard in the past few weeks. A soft tap on the door interrupted the discussion. It was the priest letting them know it was time. Catherine took a deep breath, adjusted her veil one last time, and headed toward the aisle leading to the altar. The church was packed, but not the way she'd imagined when she was little and dreamed of her wedding. People weren't there to celebrate. They were there to witness what they considered a catastrophe. Whispers and snickers filled the air, creating an atmosphere of judgment that made Catherine want to run away. But then her eyes met Nathan's, waiting at the altar. He was nervous, she could tell. The suit he wore was old, clearly borrowed or bought at some thrift store. His tie was a little crooked, and he kept fidgeting with his hands. But his smile, that smile she loved so much, was there. Genuine, full of love. And at that moment, Catherine was certain she was making the right choice. She began walking down the aisle, heavy stares upon her. On the left, she saw uncles and cousins with pitying expressions. On the right, former co-workers whispering and pointing. In the front row, her father, Richard, stared at the floor, clearly embarrassed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot who are just starting out. Now continuing. Catherine finally reached the altar and held Nathan's hands. They were rough, calloused from years of manual labor. Her hands were soft, well cared for. The contrast was visible, and she heard someone snicker about it. The priest began the ceremony, but the atmosphere was far from reverent. The low laughter continued, and Catherine saw several people on their phones probably commenting about the wedding on social media at that very moment. "We are gathered here," the priest began, his voice hesitant. He also seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation. That was when Preston, who was seated near the altar as a groomsman chosen at the insistence of Catherine's family, stood up. She had begged not to have to include him in the wedding, but Martha had insisted that it would be a grave offense not to include the bride's ex-boyfriend in the celebrations, since the families were close. "May I make a toast?" Preston asked, without waiting for an answer. The priest looked at Catherine, who shook her head no, but Preston was already speaking. "I met Catherine many years ago," he began, his tone dripping with irony. "And I always thought she was an intelligent woman with a bright future ahead of her. But today, seeing her here, trading diamonds for coal, I realize we don't always truly know people." Laughter erupted throughout the church. Catherine felt Nathan squeeze her hands tighter and saw his jaw clench with tension. "Preston, this isn't appropriate." The priest tried to intervene. "It's just a joke," Preston replied, but his eyes said otherwise. "After all, everyone here is thinking the same thing. I'm just the only one brave enough to say it." Catherine felt tears begin to well up in her eyes, but she forced herself to stay strong. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of showing weakness. "Are you done?" she asked, her voice cold. "For now." Preston sat back down, an arrogant smile on his face. The priest continued the ceremony, clearly wanting to get it over with quickly. But the interruptions didn't stop. When the time came for the vows, Ashley, one of the bridesmaids, started laughing loudly. "Sorry," she said without looking the least bit remorseful. "It's just hard to take this seriously." "Ashley!" Catherine exclaimed, feeling the anger rise. "What? You have to admit this is ridiculous." Madison joined her friend. "A janitor and a manager. It's like a fairy tale gone wrong." The three bridesmaids laughed together, and other people in the church began joining in the laughter. Catherine looked at her father, hoping he would do something, but Richard just looked away, clearly lacking the courage to face the situation. Nathan beside her remained silent. Catherine could see the pain in his eyes, but he didn't react to the provocations. That had always impressed her about him, his ability to stay calm even when everything around him was chaotic. "Maybe we should continue," Nathan said quietly to the priest. "Yes, yes," the priest agreed quickly. But before he could resume, Catherine's cousin, Amber, stood up holding a handful of dollars. "I brought a gift," she announced loudly, walking toward the altar. "Amber, what are you doing?" Catherine asked, a bad feeling washing over her. "It's the wedding gift," Amber replied, and then threw the dollars at Nathan's feet. "I thought it would be more appropriate than anything else." The sound of the dollars hitting the marble floor echoed throughout the entire church. The silence that followed was deafening, and then the laughter returned, even louder. People pointed, took photos. Catherine watched Nathan look at the dollars on the floor, and for the first time, she saw something break inside him. "This is too much," she said, letting go of Nathan's hands and turning to face her cousin. "You've all completely lost your respect." "We lost our respect." Victoria stood up too. "You're the one marrying a man who cleans toilets for a living." "So what?" Catherine shouted, no longer caring about decorum. "Is honest work something to be ashamed of now?" "When you could have so much more." "Yes," Martha joined her daughters. "You're throwing your life away, Catherine. And why? Out of pride? To prove you can?" "Out of love." Catherine felt the tears finally fall. "I love him. Why isn't that enough for any of you?" "Because love doesn't pay the bills," Richard finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Because at the end of the month, when the bills come due, love won't pay a single one of them." Catherine looked at her father, feeling as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Richard had always been her hero, the man she admired most. Hearing that from him hurt more than anything else. Nathan gently touched her arm, bringing her attention back to him. "Can we talk for a moment?" he asked quietly. "Of course," she replied, wiping away her tears. They stepped away from the altar, leaving the church buzzing with conversation and speculation. Nathan held both of her hands, looking deeply into her eyes. "I'm not going to let you go through this," he said firmly. "If you want to call it off, I understand. I won't hold you back." "Nathan, no." Catherine shook her head. "I don't want to call it off. I want to marry you. Even with all of this?" He gestured toward the church. "Even knowing we'll face this kind of judgment for the rest of our lives?" Catherine hesitated. It was a fair question. Was she truly ready for this? To be the constant joke, to be seen as the woman who threw everything away for love. Before she could answer, they heard a commotion at the entrance of the church. An elderly woman was trying to get in, but the security guards Martha had hired were blocking her way. "But I'm the groom's mother," the woman protested, her voice heavy with indignation. Nathan went pale at the sound of that voice. "My mother," he whispered, letting go of Catherine's hands and running toward the entrance. Catherine followed him, her heart aching at the sight. Mrs. Irene, a black woman around 65 years old, was being physically blocked by the security guards. She wore her best dress, clearly old but well cared for, and held a small handbag. "Mum, what's going on?" Nathan asked, reaching her. "These men say my name isn't on the list," Mrs. Irene explained, tears of humiliation in her eyes. "But I'm your mother, son. How could my name not be on the list?" Catherine felt anger boil inside her. She looked at her own mother, who had been in charge of the guest list. "Mom," she called out to Martha, "why isn't Mrs. Irene's name on the list?" Martha approached, showing no shame whatsoever. "Because we didn't have enough room," she replied simply. "The church has limited capacity." "But it's half empty." Catherine pointed at the pews with empty seats. "And you even invited people I barely know." "Appropriate people," Martha corrected. "From our social circle." "Your social circle," Catherine corrected, feeling nauseous. "I want Mrs. Irene to come in, now." "This is my decision." Martha crossed her arms. I paid for the wedding, so I decide who gets in or not. Nathan placed his hand on his mother's shoulder, his voice controlled but full of pain. It's okay, Mum. We can do this another day. No, Catherine exclaimed, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. It is not okay. Mrs. Irene is welcome at this wedding, and if anyone has to leave, let it be the people who are turning this day into a nightmare. She turned to the security guards. Let her through, now. The security guards looked at Martha, clearly confused about who they should obey. Martha, realizing she was losing control of the situation, waved her hand in a gesture of permission. Fine, let the old woman in, she said with disdain. One more won't make a difference. Catherine helped Mrs. Irene inside, noticing how the woman was trembling, still shaken by the humiliation. They walked together to a bench near the altar, and Catherine made sure she was comfortable before returning to Nathan. I'm so sorry, she said to him, tears streaming down again. It wasn't your fault, Nathan replied, but she could see the hurt in his eyes. Maybe he was reconsidering everything. Maybe he realized that marrying her would mean putting his mother in situations like that constantly. Catherine wouldn't blame him if he wanted to call it off, but Nathan just held her hand again and guided her back to the altar. The priest, who had watched everything with a shocked expression, cleared his throat and tried to resume the ceremony. As I was saying, he began, his voice less confident than before, we are gathered here to unite Nathan Bennett and Catherine Harrison in marriage. That's if she doesn't change her mind, someone muttered loudly enough to be heard. The priest ignored the comment and continued. If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be married, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. Catherine held her breath, fearing that someone would stand up and make another scene. But what happened was worse. Martha stood up and the entire church fell silent. I know a reason, she said, her voice echoing off the walls. My daughter is being deceived. This man only wants our money. Mom, Catherine exclaimed, horrified. It's true, and you know it, Martha continued, walking toward the altar. He showed up in your life out of nowhere, charms you with sweet words, and now he wants to marry you to get access to our fortune. We don't have any fortune, Catherine argued. You're always complaining about the debts. But we have more than he'll ever have. Martha pointed at Nathan with disdain. And he knows it. Nathan remained silent, his face a mask of composure. Catherine could see it was destroying him inside, but he refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him react. You'll regret this. Martha turned her attention to her daughter. You'll wake up one day, realize the mistake you've made, and it'll be too late. You'll have thrown everything away. Then let me regret it, Catherine said, her voice firm despite the tears. It's my life, my mistakes, and the consequences are mine. Martha opened her purse and took out an envelope. If you marry him today, you're disinherited. Officially, you won't see another cent of the family's money. The silence that followed was heavy. Catherine stared at the envelope in shock, barely able to believe her mother had actually done this. She had prepared documents to disinherit her, as if it were something planned. You already had this prepared, Catherine said, not as a question but as a statement. You came to my wedding with disinheritance papers. I came prepared for every possibility, Martha replied without showing any remorse. There's still time to back out, Catherine. You can choose your family, your inheritance, your future. Or you can choose him. All eyes were on Catherine now. She felt the weight of expectations, of judgments, of choices. She looked at Nathan, who kept his expression neutral, though his eyes said he would understand any decision she made. Then she looked at Mrs. Irene, sitting in the pew, hands clasped in prayer. The woman who raised a son on her own, who worked hard her whole life, who now watched her son being publicly humiliated. And she made her decision. Keep your money, Catherine said, turning to her mother. Keep your inheritance, your expectations, all of it. I choose him. I choose love. I choose to be happy. Martha shook her head, as if Catherine were a foolish child. You'll regret it, she repeated, opening the envelope and pulling out the papers. But let it be known that I tried to save you. She signed the documents right there, in front of everyone, and then handed them to Richard to sign as well. Catherine's father hesitated for a moment, looking at his daughter with sad eyes, but eventually signed. "Done," Martha announced, putting away the papers. "It's done. You're no longer heir to anything." "Great," Catherine replied, even though inside she felt as if she'd been shot. "Can we continue with the wedding now?" The priest, clearly shaken by everything he had witnessed, nodded and tried to begin once more. "Nathan Bennett," he began, turning to the groom, "do you take Catherine Harrison as your wife, to love and respect her in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, for all the days of your life?" "I do," Nathan replied, his voice firm and clear. "Catherine Harrison," the priest turned to her, "do you take Nathan Bennett as your husband, to love and respect him in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, for all the days of your life?" Catherine opened her mouth to answer, but was interrupted by another voice. This time it was an old college acquaintance, Heather, who wasn't even a bridesmaid, just a guest sitting in the back. "She's only saying yes because she's pregnant," Heather shouted. "Everyone knows that." The church erupted in murmurs. Catherine felt her blood boil in her veins. "I'm not pregnant," she shouted back. "Why does everyone keep saying that?" "Because it doesn't make sense any other way," Heather argued. "A smart woman like you wouldn't give up everything for a janitor unless there was a baby involved." "You don't know me," Catherine shot back. "None of you really know me." "We know enough," Ashley chimed in. "We know the ambitious Catherine from college, who always talked about having a successful career, about marrying well, about living comfortably. That person disappeared and was replaced by that." She gestured vaguely toward the altar, as if the whole scene was something repulsive. Nathan finally lost his patience. He let go of Catherine's hand and stepped forward, his voice thundering through the church. "Enough," he exclaimed, startling several people. "You all want to humiliate, judge, belittle, but none of you have the courage to admit what's really happening here." "And what would that be?" Preston taunted. "Enlighten us, janitor." "Envy," Nathan said simply. "You're all envious because she chose to be happy instead of being miserable with money, because she had the courage to follow her heart while all of you sold yours to look successful." "How dramatic," Victoria rolled her eyes. "Talks like he's the hero of some story." "I'm nobody's hero," Nathan replied. "I'm just a man who loves a woman, a man who works honestly, who wakes up early every day, who supports his mother with dignity. And if that's not good enough for you, that's your problem, not mine." There was a moment of silence, and then Amber began a slow, sarcastic clap. "What a pretty speech," she said. "Almost convinced me. Almost." The laughter returned, and Catherine saw Nathan close his eyes for a moment, as if gathering his strength. When he opened them again, there was determination there. "You know what's funny?" he said, his voice calm but carrying something Catherine couldn't quite identify. "You all think you know everything. You think you understand the situation, but you don't understand anything." "Then explain it to us," Preston challenged. "What is it we're not understanding?" Nathan looked at Catherine, and she saw something in his eyes that left her confused. It was almost like pity. But why? Was he feeling bad that she had been disinherited? For going through all of that? "It doesn't matter," Nathan finally said, turning to the priest. "Can we finish this?" The priest, grateful to be able to bring that troubled ceremony to an end, nodded and quickly completed the vows. When it was time to exchange rings, there were more whispers and laughter. When they saw the simple rings Nathan pulled from his pocket, they were just plain silver bands, without any shine or ornament. "How romantic," Madison murmured loudly enough to be heard. "Street vendor rings." But Catherine didn't care. When Nathan placed the ring on her finger, she felt only love. And when she did the same for him, she saw tears in the man's eyes for the first time. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest announced quickly, as if fearing more interruptions. "You may kiss the bride." Nathan gently pulled Catherine close and kissed her. It was a sweet kiss, full of promises and hope. For a brief moment, Catherine forgot everything around her. The hostile church, the family that had abandoned her, the uncertainties of the future. But the moment was broken by someone shouting, Did anyone take a picture of the rings? I'm going to post it with the caption, "When love is big but the wallet is small." More laughter. Catherine and Nathan pulled apart and walked back down the aisle, this time as husband and wife. But instead of applause and congratulations, they were met with pitying looks and stifled laughter. The reception was scheduled to take place in a small community hall that Catherine had managed to rent with her own savings. It was nothing compared to the places where her family used to throw parties, but it was what she could afford. When they arrived at the hall, Catherine realized Martha had brought more humiliation. The catering she had hired never showed up. Instead, there were only a few trays of simple appetizers that Mrs. Irene had insisted on making to help. "Where's the food?" Catherine asked, confused. "I cancelled it," Martha replied casually. "After all, I'm not going to spend my money on a party to celebrate my daughter's mistake." "But I already paid for it," Catherine exclaimed. "With the money I gave you last month," Martha shot back. "Technically, it was still my money, so I cancelled it and got the refund." Catherine felt like screaming, like crying, like running out of there. But Mrs. Irene approached and gently touched her arm. "It's all right, dear," she said with a kind smile. "I did what I could. It's not much, but it's made with love." Catherine looked at the trays of homemade appetizers and felt tears fill her eyes again. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. This woman, who barely knew her, had spent hours preparing food for her wedding reception. "Thank you," she whispered, hugging Mrs. Irene. "No need to thank me," the older woman replied, returning the embrace. "You make my son happy. That's all that matters to me." The guests began to arrive at the hall, and the complaints didn't take long. "Is this all the food?" an uncle asked with disdain. "Pigs in a blanket and sliders," Victoria laughed. "Appropriate for the level of this wedding." "I'm not even going to eat that," Brianna, one of the bridesmaids, said loudly. "Who knows where it was made? Probably in some shack's kitchen." Mrs. Irene heard the comment, and Catherine saw the pain in the woman's eyes. But before she could say anything, Nathan approached the bridesmaids. "Then don't eat," he said simply. "No one's forcing you to stay here." "We're not staying," Ashley replied, already grabbing her purse. "This is too ridiculous even for pictures. Let's go somewhere real." The three bridesmaids left together, laughing and recording the simply decorated hall on their phones. Catherine knew those videos would be on social media within minutes, being shared and commented on by hundreds of people. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, who are just starting out. Now continuing, other people started leaving too. Cousins, co-workers, old friends. Within minutes, the hall that was already small became practically empty. Only Catherine's parents, Victoria, Preston, a few closer relatives who had stayed more out of obligation than desire, and Mrs. Irene remained. "Well," Martha said, looking around with satisfaction, "I think that sums up pretty well what your life will be like from now on. Empty and disappointing." That was the last straw for Catherine. She turned to her mother, feeling anger like she had never felt before. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm your daughter. You should be happy for me." "I'm trying to save you," Martha replied, "but you're too stubborn to see it." "Save me?" Catherine let out a bitter laugh. "You're destroying me. You've turned the most important day of my life into hell." "I didn't do anything," Martha defended herself. "I just let the consequences of your choices show up. That's how the real world works, Catherine. Choices have consequences. And the consequence of your choice," Catherine said, each word coming out like a blade, "is that you just lost your daughter. I don't want to see any of you anymore. None of you." Richard stepped forward, finally showing some emotion. "Sweetheart, it doesn't have to be like this." "Yes, it does," Catherine interrupted him. "You've had hundreds of opportunities to support me, to be by my side, but you chose the money, the status, the appearance. So you can keep all of that. I don't want any part of it anymore." "You're going to regret this," Victoria said spitefully. "When you're starving, trying to pay rent on his miserable salary, you'll remember this day and you'll regret it." "Maybe," Catherine agreed, but at least I will have made my own choices. I won't have lived a lie just to please you. Martha shook her head once more and began walking toward the exit, Richard and Victoria following her. But before leaving, she turned around one last time. "When you realize the mistake you've made," she said, her voice icy, "don't come looking for me, the doors will be closed." And with that, they left, leaving Catherine and Nathan alone in the nearly empty community hall. Mrs. Irene approached and hugged them both. "You have each other," she said gently, "and that's more than a lot of people can say." Catherine wanted to believe that, but looking around the empty hall, seeing the untouched pigs in a blanket and sliders and the simple decorations, she felt doubt beginning to creep into her heart. Had she made the right choice? Or had she truly thrown everything away? The few guests who remained started to approach, more out of politeness than genuine interest. Preston was one of the last to leave, but not before whispering something to Catherine. "You can always come back, you know," he said. "When you realize you've made a mistake, I'll be here." Catherine didn't even bother to respond. She just turned her back to him, holding Nathan's hand tightly. When they were finally alone, just her, Nathan, and Mrs. Irene, the silence was overwhelming. Catherine sat down on one of the chairs, feeling the full weight of the day fall on her shoulders. "That was horrible," she said, tears finally falling freely. "That was the worst day of my life." Nathan knelt in front of her, holding her hands. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "All of this is my fault." "No, it's not," Catherine insisted, but without much conviction. "Yes, it is," Nathan affirmed. "If you had stayed with someone from your own social circle, none of this would have happened." "But I didn't want someone from my social circle," Catherine said, looking into his eyes. "I wanted you." "Even now, after everything?" Catherine hesitated. It was a fair question. Part of her, the part that was exhausted and hurt, wanted to say no. Wanted to say it had been a mistake, that she should have listened to her family. But the bigger part, the part that truly loved that man, knew the truth. "Even now," she finally answered. Nathan pulled her into a hug, and they stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other. Mrs. Irene discreetly began collecting the trays of untouched food. "What are we going to do now?" Catherine asked against Nathan's chest. "We're going to live," he answered simply. "We're going to prove we were right." "And what if we can't? What if they're right and we can't make it together?" "Then at least we tried," Nathan said, pulling back a little to look into her eyes. "And that's more than most people can say." Catherine wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe love would be enough, that they could overcome any obstacle. But reality was beginning to set in. She had been disinherited. She would no longer have her family's help. And Nathan's salary as a janitor would barely cover a decent rent. As if reading her thoughts, Nathan said, "We'll figure it out. We always do, right?" "But it's different now," Catherine argued. "Before I had my salary, my savings. Now, I don't even know if I still have a job." It was true. The owner of the company where she worked was a close friend of Richard's. It wouldn't be a surprise if she were fired on Monday, as punishment. "Then we'll find another job," Nathan said, with a confidence Catherine didn't feel. "It's not that simple." "I know," he interrupted. "But we'll figure it out. Trust me." Catherine looked at him, at this man she had chosen despite everything, and felt a flicker of hope begin to grow. Maybe he was right. Maybe they really could make it. "Okay," she said, allowing herself to believe. "We'll figure it out." They helped Mrs. Irene clean the community hall, putting away the simple decorations and packing up the leftover food. It was a sad scene, so different from what Catherine had imagined for her wedding. But as they worked together, the three of them, she felt something she hadn't felt all day. Peace. Maybe love wasn't enough to pay the bills. Maybe it wasn't enough to win social approval, but it was enough to give her the strength to keep going, and at that moment, it was all she needed. When they finished, Nathan took Catherine's hand and his mother's. "Let's go home," he said. Home. Catherine didn't even know where home was anymore. It certainly wasn't her parents' mansion, and the apartment she rented was in the family's name, so she'd probably have to leave that too. Home where? she asked, reality hitting her again. Nathan exchanged a look with Mrs. Irene, and something passed between them that Catherine couldn't decipher. "Let's go to my house," Mrs. Irene said gently. "It's not much, but you'll be welcome." Catherine knew Mrs. Irene's house was small, in a working-class neighborhood far from the center, but she nodded, grateful to have at least somewhere to go. They took a bus, since neither of them had a car. Catherine, still wearing her wedding dress, drew curious looks from the other passengers. Some smiled, wishing them well. Others just watched with curiosity. It was strange, being on a public bus in a wedding dress. Catherine had always imagined leaving her wedding in a decorated car, heading off to an exotic honeymoon. Reality was very different. Arriving at Mrs. Irene's neighborhood, Catherine observed the narrow streets, the simple houses side by side. It was a completely different world from the one she knew, but people greeted Mrs. Irene with genuine warmth, and that warmed Catherine's heart. "Mrs. Irene," a neighbor called out, "is it your son who got married today?" "Yes," Mrs. Irene answered proudly. "This is my daughter-in-law, Catherine." "How lovely," the neighbor exclaimed. "Welcome to the neighborhood, dear." Catherine thanked her, surprised by the warm reception. It was so different from the treatment she'd received at the church, from the laughter and judgment. Here, people who didn't even know her were genuinely happy for her. Mrs. Irene's house was small, with only 2 bedrooms, a living room and a kitchen, but it was impeccably clean and organized, every corner showing the care and love of its owner. "Nathan's room is empty," Mrs. Irene explained. "You can stay there. I'll prepare something for you to eat." "Don't worry, Mom," Nathan said. "We've already done a lot today." "Nonsense," Mrs. Irene replied, already heading to the kitchen. "You must be famished." Catherine realized she actually was. She hadn't eaten anything all day, too nervous to think about food. And now, in the simplicity of that house, she felt hungrier than she had in a long time. Nathan led her to the room, which was small but comfortable. There was a simple double bed, an old but well-kept wardrobe, and a few photos on the walls. Catherine walked over to the photos, seeing Nathan at various ages, always smiling. "When are these photos from?" she asked. "Different times," Nathan replied, coming to stand beside her. "My mother always liked to photograph important moments." Catherine noticed something in the photos. Nathan was always alone with his mother. There was no father in any of them. "Your father," she began hesitantly. "He left us when I was 5 years old," Nathan said simply. "He decided family was too heavy a burden and walked away. He never came back." "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Nathan shrugged. "My mother was both father and mother. We never lacked love." Catherine thought about her own family. Technically, she had a father and mother, but how much love was really there? Martha had always been cold, calculating. Richard was distant, more concerned with business than with his daughters. Had she really lost that much? A delicious smell began to come from the kitchen, and soon Mrs. Irene called them to dinner. The table was set simply, but the food was plentiful and made with care. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Nothing fancy, but Catherine thought it was the best meal she'd had in a long time. "It's delicious," she said sincerely. "I'm glad you like it." Mrs. Irene smiled. "Sorry, it's nothing too elaborate." "It's perfect," Catherine insisted, and it was true. Sitting at that simple table with those 2 people who had welcomed her with open arms, Catherine felt more at home than she had ever felt in her parents' mansion. After dinner, Mrs. Irene retired to her own room, leaving the newlyweds alone. Catherine and Nathan got ready to sleep, both exhausted from the stressful day. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked as they lay down. "Honestly, I don't know," Catherine replied. "I lost my family today, Nathan. I lost everything I knew." "But you gained a new family," he said, pulling her close. "My mother already loves you, I can see it." "She barely knows me." "She knows enough," Nathan stated. "She knows the kind of person you are, and that's what matters to her." Catherine snuggled against him, finally feeling some of the day's stress begin to melt away. But one question still bothered her. "Nathan, are you sure we're going to make it? Financially, I mean." He took a moment to respond, and when he did, his voice sounded strange. "We're going to make it," he said airily. "Trust me." There was something in his tone that made Catherine want to ask more, but exhaustion finally won her over, and she fell asleep, still wearing the simple wedding dress. The next morning, Catherine woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. For a moment, confused, she thought she was at home. But then she remembered everything that had happened the day before, and reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. She no longer had a home. She no longer had a family. She had lost everything for love of a man she barely knew. Nathan still slept beside her, his face relaxed in sleep. Catherine watched him for a moment, wondering what the future held for them. What would it be like, living on a janitor's salary? She would have to look for a job urgently, but she didn't know if she'd manage after yesterday's scandal. The story of her marriage was probably already spread all over the city. She got up carefully so as not to wake him and went to the kitchen, where she found Mrs. Irene preparing breakfast. "Good morning, my dear," the lady greeted her with a warm smile. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," Catherine lied. In truth, she had woken up several times during the night, her mind unable to rest. "Sit down, I'll pour you some coffee," Mrs. Irene said, gesturing to the table. As they had coffee together, Catherine observed the lady. She must have been around 65, maybe a bit older. Her face bore the marks of a life of hard work, but her eyes were kind and full of life. "Can I ask you something?" Catherine said hesitantly. "Of course, dear. How did you manage to raise Nathan on your own?" "It couldn't have been easy." Mrs. Irene smiled, but there was sadness in that smile. "It wasn't easy, no," she admitted. "I worked as a maid in several homes, sometimes 2-3 jobs at once. Nathan stayed with the neighbors while I worked." "Did he ever complain?" "Never." Mrs. Irene shook her head. "He was always an understanding boy, studious. He wanted to help, but I insisted he focus on his studies." "And did he manage to finish school?" Something strange crossed Mrs. Irene's face, an expression Catherine couldn't read. "He did," she answered simply, but her voice carried a different tone. Before Catherine could ask anything else, Nathan appeared in the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Good morning," he said, kissing his mother on the forehead and then Catherine. "Good morning, son." Mrs. Irene got up. "I'll fix you some breakfast." "No need, Mum, you've already done more than enough. Let me take care of you both," she insisted. "It's so rare to have you home." Catherine noticed the remark and felt confused. The room was clearly Nathan's, but Mrs. Irene spoke as if he didn't live there. "Where do you live?" she asked him. Nathan exchanged another one of those strange looks with his mother before answering. "I have a place," he said vaguely. "But I'm barely there. I spend most of my time working." Catherine knew he worked as a janitor at the office building, arriving before dawn. But where did he sleep when he wasn't working or at his mother's house? It seemed there were many things about Nathan's life she didn't know. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. Catherine helped Mrs. Irene with the household chores, something she had never done much of at her parents' house. It felt strange but also liberating in a way. There was satisfaction in seeing a job well done, no matter how simple. In the afternoon, some of the neighbors came by, curious to meet Mrs. Irene's daughter-in-law. They were all incredibly kind, bringing small gifts and wishing them happiness. It was so different from the reception Catherine had gotten at church that she almost cried. "Mrs. Irene is very beloved around here," one of the neighbors, Mrs. Rose, explained. "She always helps everyone. When my husband got sick, she was the one who took care of him while I had to work, and she never accepts anything in return," another neighbor, Mrs. Mary, added. "She says helping others is everyone's duty." Catherine looked at Mrs. Irene with newfound respect. That woman had so little, yet gave so much. She was the complete opposite of Martha, who had everything but gave nothing without expecting something back. When the neighbors left, Catherine helped prepare dinner. Nathan was in the living room fiddling with an old laptop. Catherine didn't know he had a laptop. In fact, she didn't even know he used a computer. "What are you working on?" she asked, walking over. Nathan snapped the laptop shut quickly, almost as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. "Nothing important," he said. "Just checking a few things." "What kind of things?" "Job opportunities," he replied, but Catherine had the feeling that wasn't the whole truth. That night, lying in bed again, Catherine finally put into words what she was feeling. "I feel like you're hiding something from me," she said in the dark. Nathan grew tense beside her. "Why do you say that?" "I don't know. It's just a feeling. Like there are parts of your life you don't want me to see." "Everyone has private parts," Nathan argued. "I know, but—" Catherine hesitated. "We're married now. Shouldn't we not have secrets from each other?" Nathan was silent for a long moment. Finally, he turned to face her. "What if I told you there are things about me you don't know? Things that could change everything?" Catherine's heart raced. Did he have a secret family, a huge debt, trouble with the law? "What kind of things?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I can't talk about it yet," Nathan said, turning back onto his back, "but I promise I'll tell you. Soon." "Why not now?" "Because—" He paused, choosing his words. "Because I need to be sure of the right moment." Catherine wanted to insist, but something in his voice made her stop. There was a vulnerability there she rarely saw. Nathan always seemed so confident, so in control. Seeing him like this, insecure, was almost frightening. "All right," she finally said. "But do you promise you'll tell me?" "I promise," he replied, pulling her close. "When the time comes, you'll know everything." On Monday, Catherine woke up early, determined to go to work. She didn't know if she still had a job, but she had to try. She put on one of the few outfits she had brought and took the bus downtown. When she arrived at the office building, she felt all eyes on her. People were whispering, pointing. They obviously already knew about the marriage. Catherine kept her head high and went straight to her office. Her boss, Mr. Robert Sterling, called her as soon as she arrived. "Catherine, I need to talk to you." Her heart sank. Here came the firing. "Yes, sir." "About your marriage," Robert began, and Catherine braced herself for the worst. "I wanted to congratulate you." Catherine blinked, confused. "Congratulate?" "Yes," Robert smiled. "I admire courage. It's not easy to go against family expectations for love." "You aren't going to fire me?" Catherine asked, still processing. "Fire you? Why would I do that?" Robert seemed genuinely confused. "You're one of my best employees. I'm not going to lose you over gossip." "But my father—" "Your father did call me," Robert admitted, "asking me to fire you. I said no. You deserve your job because of your merits, not because of your family's opinion." Catherine felt tears of relief fill her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "No need to thank me," Robert said kindly. "Just keep doing the good work you've always done." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just getting started. Now, continuing. Catherine left her boss's office feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She still had a job. She still had a way to support herself. Maybe things weren't as impossible as they seemed, but the feeling of relief was short-lived. During the day, she received several messages from unknown numbers. They were all insults, cruel jokes about her marriage. Someone had shared her number online, and now she was being harassed by strangers. She blocked the numbers, but more kept appearing. It was like an endless torrent of hatred. Catherine locked herself in the bathroom and cried, feeling completely overwhelmed. When she came home that night, exhausted and emotionally drained, she found Nathan and Mrs. Irene waiting with dinner ready. The simple kindness of it made her tears come back. "What happened?" Nathan asked, worried. Catherine told him about the messages, about the online harassment. Nathan was furious, but Mrs. Irene placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Cruel people exist, dear," she said calmly, "but they only have power if you give it to them. Ignore, block, move on." "Easier said than done," Catherine muttered. "I know," Mrs. Irene agreed, "but with time it gets easier, trust me." That night, Nathan brought out his old laptop again and showed Catherine how to set up privacy on social media, how to block messages from strangers. He seemed surprisingly tech-savvy for someone who worked as a janitor. "Where did you learn all this?" Catherine asked. "I taught myself," Nathan replied. "I've always liked technology." "Have you ever thought about working in it? You seem really good." Nathan gave a strange smile. "I have, actually." The days turned into weeks. Catherine settled into a routine, waking up early, going to work, coming back to Mrs. Irene's house, helping with the household chores, having dinner with the family. It was a simple life, a far cry from the luxury she was used to. But there was a peace here that she had never experienced before. Nathan kept working as a janitor, though Catherine noticed he was away more and more often. Sometimes he'd leave in the middle of the night and only come back in the morning. When she asked, he said they were extra shifts. But something didn't add up. One day, about a month after the wedding, Catherine received an unexpected phone call. It was Victoria. "Hey," her sister said, her voice strangely hesitant. "Hey," Catherine answered, surprised. She hadn't spoken to her family since the wedding. I need to talk to you, about what?" "Not over the phone. Can we meet?" Catherine hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, to protect herself from more pain. But the other part, the part that still loved her sister despite everything, agreed. They met at a simple coffee shop, far from the places they used to go. Victoria arrived wearing expensive clothes, perfect makeup, but there was something in her eyes that seemed sad. "Are you okay?" Catherine asked as they sat down. "I should be asking you that," Victoria said. "You're the one who was disinherited, married a janitor, and are living in a small house in a poor neighborhood." "And yet I'm happier than I've ever been," Catherine answered honestly. Victoria stared at her for a long moment. "You really are? Or are you just pretending so you don't have to admit you made a mistake?" "I really am," Catherine insisted. "It's not easy and it's not what I imagined. But I'm happy." "How?" Victoria asked, and there was genuine confusion in her voice. "How can you be happy with so little?" "Because I have true love," Catherine explained. "I have someone who sees me as a person, not a trophy or an extension of the family. I have a mother-in-law who treats me with more kindness than our own mother ever did." Tears began to fall from Victoria's eyes, surprising Catherine. I think I made a mistake," her sister confessed. "What kind of mistake?" "Justin proposed to me," Victoria said, referring to her boyfriend, the son of a wealthy family. "And I said yes, but I don't love him." "Not at all. I'm only with him because it's what everyone expects." Catherine held her sister's hand. "Then don't marry him. It's not that simple." Victoria shook her head. "You know how our family is. If I break up with him, they'll blame me. They'll say I'm difficult, impossible to please." "So what?" Catherine asked. "Is it worth being miserable just to please everyone else?" "It was easy for you to give everything up," Victoria said with a hint of bitterness. "You were always the brave one." "It wasn't easy," Catherine corrected. "And I'm not brave. I just decided that my happiness was worth more than their approval." Victoria wiped her tears and tried to compose herself. "Anyway, that's not why I called you here," she said, changing the subject. "I wanted to warn you about something." "What?" "Mum is investigating Nathan," Victoria revealed. "She hired a private detective to dig into his life." Catherine felt her blood run cold. "Why?" "Because she's convinced he's hiding something bad. And she wants to prove you made the wrong choice." "But that's insane!" Catherine exclaimed. "Why can't she just accept that I'm happy?" "Because she doesn't understand happiness," Victoria said sadly. "To her, success is all that matters." Catherine was shaken by the news. Nathan had already said he was hiding something, but he had reassured her by saying he would tell her when the time was right. What if Martha found out first? What if it was something truly bad? "Thank you for telling me," she said to her sister. I miss you," Victoria admitted. "The house feels empty without you." "You can visit me whenever you want," Catherine offered, "even if Mom doesn't approve." "Maybe," Victoria said, but they both knew it was unlikely. They said goodbye with a hug, and Catherine went home with her head full of worries. When she arrived, she found Nathan already home, which was unusual. He normally didn't come back until later. "We need to talk," he said as soon as he saw her. Catherine's heart raced. Had he found out about the detective? Or was it about the secret he'd promised to reveal? "About what?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. About us. About the future. Nathan guided her to the couch and they sat down. There's something I need to show you. He grabbed his old laptop and opened some files. Catherine saw numbers, charts, documents she didn't understand. What is this? It's complicated, Nathan said, running his hand over his face. Remember when you asked if I was hiding something? Yes. Well, I was. I am. He took a deep breath. Catherine, I'm not just a janitor. Her heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean that... He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. I do work as a janitor, yes, but it's not my only occupation. Or rather, it's not my true occupation. Nathan, you're scaring me, Catherine said, 1,000 possibilities running through her mind. Are you involved in something illegal? No, he quickly reassured her. Nothing illegal. It's just complicated to explain. Then explain slowly, Catherine asked, her heart still pounding. Do you remember when we met? 3 years ago. Tas, yes, you were just starting to work at the building. That's not exactly how it was, Nathan confessed. I had already been there for a while, just not as a janitor. Catherine was growing more and more confused. I don't understand. Catherine. Nathan took her hands, looking deeply into her eyes. I don't work at the building. I own the building. There was a moment of absolute silence as Catherine processed that. What? She finally said, unable to believe what she was hearing. I bought the building 4 years ago, Nathan explained, along with several other commercial properties in the area. I'm part of a real estate investment group. But you clean the hallways. I saw you. I know, Nathan admitted. I let one of the employees leave and took over his shift. It was a way to be close to you, without you knowing who I really was. Catherine stood up, moving away from him, trying to process it all. You lied to me. I didn't lie, Nathan argued. I just omitted part of the truth. And how is that different? Catherine felt anger rising. Why? Why would you do this? Because Nathan also stood up, walking toward her. Because I got tired of people approaching me because of my money. I wanted to know what it was like to be seen as a normal person, not as someone to be used. So you used me? Catherine accused. You made me look ridiculous, let everyone mock me at the wedding, knowing all along it was a lie. It wasn't like that, Nathan exclaimed. I didn't plan any of this. It's just, when you looked at me for the first time, you actually saw me. You didn't see my money, my status, my possessions. You saw me. But I didn't see the real you, now Catherine shot back. I saw a lie. No, Nathan shook his head firmly. You saw the most real part of me. The part that doesn't need to impress anyone, that doesn't need to pretend to be more than it is. Catherine sat back down, feeling her legs go weak. Everything she thought she knew about her life over the past few months was being turned upside down. You have money, she said, trying to organize her thoughts. How much? Nathan hesitated. A good amount. How much? A few million, he admitted. Catherine let out a humorless laugh. A few million. And you let me get disowned, lose my family, be publicly humiliated, all while you had the money to put an end to it? You don't understand, Nathan tried to explain. If I had revealed it earlier, how would you know your love was real? How would I know? So you tested me? Catherine felt fury rise. You used our relationship as a social experiment? It wasn't like that. Nathan was growing desperate. I just wanted to be sure. After everything I've been through, everyone who approached me out of self-interest, I needed to be certain you were different. And I was, Catherine said coldly. But you destroyed that. You lied, you omitted, you let me suffer when you could have prevented all of it. Catherine, please. Nathan tried to reach for her, but she pulled away. I need time, she said. I need to process this. How much time? I don't know, Catherine admitted. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if what I feel for you is real or based on a lie. My love for you is real, Nathan stated. That much I can guarantee. But how can I believe you now? Catherine asked, tears finally falling. How can I trust anything you say? Nathan had no answer for that. They stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of the revelation hanging between them. Finally, Catherine grabbed her purse. "I'm going out for a bit," she said. "Where to?" "I don't know, I just need to be alone." "Catherine, wait." "No," she cut him off. "You had 3 years to tell me the truth. Now I need time to decide what to do with it." She walked out of the house, ignoring Nathan's calls. She wandered aimlessly through the neighborhood, her mind a jumble of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion, and strangely, a hint of relief. Because if Nathan had money, it meant her financial worries were unfounded. It meant they could have a comfortable life. But at what cost? At the cost of a lie that had permeated their entire relationship. Catherine ended up sitting in a small park, watching children play. A simple life, no complications. How she wished she could have that. Her phone rang. It was Victoria. "Hey," she answered. "The detective found something," Victoria said without preamble. "About Nathan." "I know," Catherine replied wearily. "He told me." "He told you?" Victoria sounded surprised. "So you know he's rich. I just found out. And? How do you feel?" "Betrayed," Catherine admitted. "And confused. And I don't know what to think or feel anymore. Are you going back to Mom now? Going to say you made a mistake?" Catherine thought for a moment. "No, sir," she finally answered, "because I didn't make a mistake in choosing Nathan. I made a mistake in trusting him completely without really knowing him." "Are those different things?" "They are," Catherine affirmed. "And now I need to figure out if I can forgive him and rebuild that trust, or if the lie was too big. And if it is? Then at least I learned a valuable lesson," Catherine said. "That love isn't enough without trust." They said goodbye, and Catherine remained sitting in the square, thinking. The sun was beginning to set when she finally decided to go home. Nathan was waiting at the door, anxious. Mrs. Irene was also there, looking worried. "Are you okay?" the lady asked. "I am," Catherine replied. "I just needed time to think." "Nathan told me everything," Mrs. Irene said. "About the money, about the lie. And I told him it was wrong to do that to you." "Mum," Nathan began, but Mrs. Irene silenced him with a look. "No, son, you were wrong. I know your intentions were good, but you hurt this girl. And that's not right." Catherine was touched by Mrs. Irene's defense. Even though she was Nathan's mother, she was being fair. "Thank you," she said to the lady. "I'll leave you two to talk," Mrs. Irene announced, heading to her room. Catherine and Nathan were left alone in the living room, the silence heavy between them. "I'm so sorry," Nathan finally said. "I'm sorry for having lied, for having hidden the truth. You didn't deserve that." "No, I didn't," Catherine agreed. "But I need to understand. Why keep the lie going for so long? Why not tell me before the wedding?" "Because I was afraid," Nathan admitted. "Afraid that you would change, that you would start seeing me differently. And when the wedding got closer, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. And after the whole disaster at the church, after I was disinherited, after all that humiliation." Catherine felt the anger returning. "Why not tell me then?" "Because I saw how strong you were," Nathan explained. "I saw how you faced everything, how you chose love above all else. And I realized that you truly loved me, not for the money, but for who I was. And that meant everything to me." "But I didn't know who you really were," Catherine exclaimed. "How could you truly love me if you were living a lie?" "Because the only lie was about money," Nathan argued. "Everything else was real. My love, my personality, my values, it's all real." Catherine wanted to believe him, but it was hard. "You said you have a few million. Where did that money come from? How does a janitor become a millionaire?" Nathan sighed and sat down on the couch, gesturing for her to do the same. "It's a long story," he began, "but I'm going to tell you everything. No more lies." Catherine sat down, preparing herself to listen. "When I was younger," Nathan began, "I had a knack for technology. While working to help my mother, I studied programming on my own. I spent nights at public internet cafes, learning, creating. And eventually I created a software, something simple but useful." Nathan continued. "It was a management system for small businesses. I started selling it online at a low price, and it was a success." Catherine listened, fascinated, as Nathan recounted how his simple software grew, how he invested the profits in real estate, how he kept developing technology while keeping a low profile. "But why work as a janitor if you had all that?" she asked. "Because," Nathan said, looking into her eyes, "I lost my first wife 5 years ago." Catherine froze. He had been married before. "She passed away in an accident," Nathan said, the pain clear in his voice. "And I realized that all the money in the world meant nothing without someone to share it with. So I decided to live more simply, more genuinely. I wanted to know what it was like to be treated as an ordinary person. And you found me, and I found you," he agreed. "And you were everything I hoped for and more. Kind, genuine, real. You didn't care that I was just a janitor. You saw value in me as a person." "But that was based on a lie," Catherine reminded him. "It was," Nathan admitted, "and I'm very sorry for that. But Catherine, everything I felt, everything we lived through together, was real. The money doesn't change who I am inside." Catherine knew he was partly right, but the lie still hurt. "I need time," she repeated. "Time to process this, to decide if I can move forward." "How much time do you need?" Nathan asked, fear in his voice. "I don't know," Catherine answered honestly. The following days were strange. Catherine continued living at Mrs. Irene's house, but there was a distance between her and Nathan. They were polite to each other, but the intimacy was broken. Mrs. Irene tried to help, talking to both of them separately, trying to make each one see the other's point of view. But deep down, she was also hurt by her son for having lied. "You should have been honest from the start," she said to Nathan one night, unaware that Catherine was listening from the hallway. "I know, Mum," Nathan replied. "That girl deserved better. She faced the whole world for you, and you deceived her." "I wasn't deceiving her," Nathan protested. "I was just protecting myself." "At her expense," Mrs. Irene pointed out. "And that's selfishness, son, no matter how you justify it." Catherine stepped away from the door, feeling a mixture of gratitude toward Mrs. Irene and sadness about the whole situation. At work, things got even more complicated when her boss, Mr. Robert Sterling, called her into his office again. "Catherine, I need to talk to you about your husband," he said. Her heart sank. Had the story already reached work? "What about him?" "I found out who he really is," Mr. Robert Sterling explained. "Nathan Bennett from Bennett Holdings, one of the biggest real estate investors in the region." "You knew?" Catherine asked, surprised. "Not until a few days ago," Mr. Robert Sterling admitted. "A client mentioned that he had seen the owner of Bennett Holdings in our building, and that he looked like your husband. I investigated and found out it was true." Catherine didn't know what to say. "Bennett Holdings," Mr. Robert Sterling continued, "owns several of the buildings where our company does business, including this one." "This building?" "Yes, your husband is technically my landlord," Mr. Robert Sterling laughed. "And here I was thinking I was doing you a favor by keeping you on after your father asked for your resignation." Catherine felt her head spin. Had Nathan interfered to make sure she kept her job? More manipulation, another lie. "Did he ask you to keep me?" she asked. "No, Mr. Robert Sterling quickly reassured her. "Actually, I don't know if he knows you work here. We've never had direct contact. Everything is done through middle managers." Small consolation. But at least it wasn't another lie. When she got home that night, Catherine confronted Nathan. "Did you know you owned the building where I work?" Nathan hesitated before answering. "I knew." "And you didn't tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel uncomfortable," Nathan explained. "Your job is yours, earned on your own merits. I didn't interfere with anything." "But you could have," Catherine pointed out. "And that's the problem, Nathan. You have all this power, all this influence, and I knew nothing about it. How is that fair?" "It's not fair," Nathan admitted. "And I'm sorry, but Catherine, I'm telling you everything now. No more secrets. What can I do to earn back your trust?" Catherine thought for a moment. "I want to see," she said. "See what?" "Your real life. Your company, your business, everything you hid from me. I want to meet the real Nathan." Nathan nodded. "All right, I'll show you everything." The next day, Nathan took her downtown to a tall, modern building. They went up to the top floor where the Bennett Holdings offices were located. Catherine was impressed by the modernity and elegance of the place. Employees greeted Nathan with respect, clearly recognizing him as the boss. "This is my office," he said, opening a door to a spacious room with a panoramic view of the city. It was impressive, very different from the small room where Catherine worked. "It's incredible," she admitted. "I rarely come here," Nathan explained. "I prefer working from home or on that old laptop you saw. I don't like all this pomp." "But it's yours." "It is. But it doesn't define me." Nathan spent the rest of the day showing Catherine the different aspects of his business. The buildings he owned, the investments he had made, the projects in progress. It was a completely different world, and Catherine began to understand the magnitude of what Nathan had hidden from her. "Why keep working as a janitor when you have all this?" she asked again, needing to understand. "Because this," Nathan gestured to the office, "is just work, money. But out there at the building, cleaning hallways, talking to regular people, living a simple life, that kept me human. It reminded me of what truly matters." "And what truly matters?" "Genuine connections," Nathan answered. "True love, things money can't buy." Catherine wanted to believe him, wanted to accept his explanations, but the wound was still fresh. That night, back at Mrs. Irene's house, Catherine had a long conversation with the older woman while Nathan was out. "Mrs. Irene," she began, "did you know about all of this? About Nathan's money?" The woman nodded. "Yes, I did." "And you never thought you should tell me?" "It wasn't my place," Mrs. Irene explained. "But if you want to know the truth, I told Nathan to tell you from the beginning. I warned him that lies always come back to haunt us." "And why didn't he listen to you?" "Because stubborn men rarely listen to their mothers," Mrs. Irene gave a sad smile. "And because he was afraid, very afraid of being hurt again." "Did he tell you about his first wife?" "He did. And I was there when it happened." Mrs. Irene looked out the window, lost in memories. "It was horrible. He closed himself off completely after that, stopped trusting anyone. It took years for him to truly live again. And then I came along." "And then you came along," Mrs. Irene confirmed, "and for the first time in years I saw my son truly smile. I saw hope in his eyes. You were good for him, Catherine. You still are." "But the lie—" "It was wrong, no doubt," Mrs. Irene agreed. "But it wasn't ill-intentioned. It was fear, insecurity, very human things. Do you think I should forgive him?" "I think you should do what your heart tells you," Mrs. Irene said wisely. "But remember, no relationship is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. The question is his mistake too big to be forgiven?" Catherine reflected on that in the following weeks. She observed Nathan, truly observed him. She saw how he treated his mother with love and respect, how he continued to be kind to neighbors and strangers, how, even after revealing the truth about his wealth, his behavior hadn't changed. One night, about 2 months after the revelation, Catherine finally made her decision. "Nathan," she called him, "can we talk?" He agreed immediately, and they sat down in the living room. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything," Catherine began, "about the lie, about our relationship, about the future." "And?" Nathan asked, clearly nervous. "And I've come to some conclusions," she continued. "First, you were wrong to lie, very wrong, and it hurt our relationship in ways that will take time to heal." Nathan nodded, accepting the judgment. "Second, I understand why you lied. I don't agree with it, but I understand. And I think that in your situation, maybe I would have been afraid too." "Does that mean—" "Let me finish," Catherine interrupted him. "Third, despite the lie, I think what we have is real. You may have lied about money, but you didn't lie about who you are as a person. And that person, I still love." Tears began to form in Nathan's eyes. "Catherine, but," she continued, her voice firm, "we can't go on like this. I can't live in your mother's house like a guest. I can't keep pretending we're a normal couple when clearly we're not. What do you want?" "I want to start over," Catherine said. "For real, no lies, no secrets. I want us to truly get to know each other, to build something solid." "And what about the money?" The money is yours, Catherine stated. I didn't marry you for money before, and I'm not going to stay with you for money now. But I'm also not going to pretend it doesn't exist. It needs to be part of who we are as a couple. What do you suggest? I suggest, Catherine said, having thought about it a great deal, that we buy a house, a simple one, nothing flashy, that we live within my means, not yours, that the extra money be used for good things, to help people. Like Mrs. Rose and Mrs. Mary, the neighbors? Like everyone in need, Catherine agreed. You have the opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives, and I want to be part of that. Nathan pulled her into a hug, tears falling freely now. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for giving me another chance. Don't thank me yet, Catherine said, but she returned the embrace. You still have a lot of work ahead of you. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I know, and I'll do whatever it takes. In the following weeks, they truly started over. Nathan introduced Catherine to every aspect of his business life. She met partners, clients, employees. She began to understand the magnitude of what he had built, and Nathan, in turn, began to truly open up. He told her about his difficult childhood, about what it was like being raised by a single mother in a poor neighborhood, about the challenges he faced, the prejudice of being a black man in predominantly white spaces. I always had to prove I was twice as good, he explained one night, and even then it often wasn't enough. So I developed this armor, this need to keep people at a distance. But not with me, Catherine said, at least not at first. Not with you, Nathan agreed. With you, for the first time, I could be myself, and it was frightening and wonderful at the same time. They also began working together on philanthropic projects. They used part of Nathan's money to renovate the neighborhood where Mrs. Irene lived, improving homes, creating community spaces, offering job opportunities. The community, which already loved Mrs. Irene, came to love Catherine as well. She was seen as one of them, not as a rich woman coming to do charity. Because she truly cared, she truly showed up. One day, about 4 months after the troubled wedding, Catherine received an unexpected phone call. It was Martha. Hi, her mother said, her voice strangely hesitant. Hi, Catherine answered cautiously. I heard things, Martha began, about your husband. What kind of things? That he's rich? Very rich, Martha paused. Is it true? It is. There was silence on the other end of the line. So you knew? Martha finally asked. You knew he had money all along? No, Catherine replied. I only found out recently. And? There was anxiety in Martha's voice. Are you coming home now? Catherine let out a bitter laugh. You think that's why I married him? For money? Well, if it wasn't before, you can certainly take advantage of it now. Mother, Catherine said, her voice icy, I didn't marry him for money. I married him for love. And the fact that he has money doesn't change anything. But it changes everything, Martha exclaimed. You don't have to live in that awful little house anymore. You don't have to... I live where I want to live, Catherine interrupted. And no, it's not at Mrs. Irene's house anymore. We bought a simple house in the same neighborhood. Because we want to be close to the community we love. But you could have a mansion. I could, Catherine agreed. But I don't want to. I want a real life with real people, making a real difference. You've gone crazy, Martha declared. No, Mom. I've finally come to my senses, Catherine replied. And if you called hoping I'd come running back now that you found out there's money involved, you're going to be disappointed. But Catherine... Bye, Mum. Catherine hung up. Her phone rang several times after that, but she ignored it. Martha was only interested now that there was money involved, and that proved Catherine had made the right choice. Victoria called shortly after. Mum is furious, she said, but there was humor in her voice. Let her be. She really thought you were going to come running back. Victoria laughed. She doesn't know you at all. What about you? Catherine asked. How are things with Justin? There was a pause. I broke up with him, Victoria finally said. What? Catherine was surprised. I saw you. Victoria explained. "I saw how you chose to be happy instead of following expectations, and I realized I deserved that too, so I ended it. And Mom, she was furious, obviously." Victoria laughed. "But I don't care. For the first time in my life, I'm doing what I want, not what she wants." "I'm proud of you," Catherine said sincerely. "I should be the one who's proud of you," Victoria replied. "You showed me that it's possible to be strong." The sisters talked for a long time, truly reconnecting. It was as if the falling out with Martha had freed them both to be who they truly were. Months passed. Catherine and Nathan worked together to rebuild their relationship, establishing a solid foundation of trust and honesty. It wasn't easy, and there were times when Catherine still felt anger about the initial lie, but slowly love won. The small house they bought in Mrs. Irene's neighborhood became a true home, simple but full of love and life. Neighbors often visited, and they often returned the visits. It was a life of community, of real connection. Nathan also began to open up more publicly about his identity. He no longer hid that he owned Bennett Holdings, but he didn't flaunt it either. He remained the same humble and kind person he had always been. One day, about 8 months after the wedding, they received an unexpected visit. It was Preston, Catherine's ex-boyfriend, who had been so cruel at the wedding. "May I come in?" he asked at the door, looking uncomfortable. Catherine and Nathan exchanged a look and she nodded. "Of course." Preston entered, looking around the simple house with a confused expression. "This is your home?" he asked. "I thought your husband was rich." "He is," Catherine replied. "But I don't need a mansion to be happy." "I came to apologize," Preston said, the words clearly difficult for him. "For what I said at the wedding. It was cruel and unnecessary." "It was," Nathan agreed. "But it's in the past now." "No, it isn't," Preston insisted. "Because I was an idiot. I lost you," he looked at Catherine. "Because of pride, because of arrogance. And now I see that you were right. You found something real, something I never had." "Preston," Catherine said gently, "I forgive you. But this doesn't change anything. I'm happy with Nathan and you need to move on." "I know," he admitted. "I just wanted you to know that I was wrong. About everything." He left shortly after, leaving Catherine and Nathan alone again. "That was strange," Nathan commented. "It was," Catherine agreed. "But I think it was necessary. For him, not for us." That night, lying in bed, Nathan pulled Catherine close. "You know I love you, right?" he said. "I know," she replied. "And I love you too, in spite of everything, because of everything." "I have no regrets," Nathan confessed, "of falling in love with you, of marrying you, of living through everything we lived. But I regret the lie." "I know," Catherine said, "and we're working on it. We're building something better. Something real." "Something real," she agreed. A few more months went by. Their relationship kept growing, getting stronger. And then, a year after the troubled wedding, Nathan had an idea. "Let's renew our vows," he suggested. "What?" Catherine was surprised. "Let's have a new wedding," Nathan explained, "this time without lies, without drama, without judgment. Just us, the people we love, celebrating our love for real." Catherine thought about it. The idea was appealing. A chance to redo that awful day, to create better memories. "All right," she agreed. "Let's do it." They planned a small, intimate ceremony. Just the neighborhood community, a few of Catherine's co-workers and Victoria. No showing off, no unnecessary luxury. Just genuine celebration. The day arrived. Unlike the first wedding, this one was full of love and joy. People were truly happy for them. There was no judgment, no cruel laughter. As Catherine walked down the makeshift aisle in the community hall they had renovated, she saw Nathan waiting for her with tears in his eyes. But this time, they were tears of pure happiness. "We are here," the local priest began, a man from the neighborhood who knew them both well. "To renew the vows of Catherine and Nathan, to celebrate a love that overcame obstacles, that grew through challenges, that became stronger amid the storms." Catherine looked at Nathan, seeing in him not the janitor she had met, nor the millionaire she had discovered, but the man she loved. Complex, flawed, but genuinely good. "Nathan," she said when her turn came to speak. "Our beginning was complicated. There were lies, there was pain, but there was also love. So much love. And I choose that love every day, not because it's easy, but because it's real." "Catherine," Nathan replied, holding her hands, "you taught me that true wealth has nothing to do with money. It's about connections, about love, about making a difference in people's lives. You made me want to be better, to do better, and I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me." They exchanged new rings, this time made of a special metal Nathan had commissioned. They weren't flashy, but they had meaning. "These rings," he explained to everyone, "were made with recycled metal from old equipment in the neighborhood, because our love was also built with imperfect materials, transformed into something beautiful." There was applause and tears of emotion, and when the priest declared them husband and wife once again, the kiss was different, deeper, truer, more complete. The party afterward was simple but joyful. Home-cooked food, live music played by talented neighbors, genuine laughter. It was everything the first wedding should have been. Mrs. Irene approached Catherine in a quiet moment. "You made my son happy," she said, tears in her eyes, "and you gave me the daughter I always wanted. Thank you." "No, thank you," Catherine replied, embracing the woman, "for accepting me, for loving me, for showing me what family truly means." Victoria also came to greet her. "You were right," her sister said, "about everything. Love is more important than money, and now I'm going to look for my own true love too." "You'll find it," Catherine assured her, "when you least expect it." At the end of the night, when the guests had left and they were finally alone, Nathan and Catherine stood in the backyard of the house, looking at the stars. "Was it worth it?" Nathan asked. "All the suffering, all the hardships. Was it worth it?" Catherine thought about the question. She thought about everything they had been through, every tear shed, every difficult moment. "Thanks," she finally replied, "because you brought us here, because you made us stronger, because we've proven that true love can overcome anything. Even lies?" "Even lies," she confirmed, "as long as there's genuine remorse, real effort to change, and you've shown both." Nathan pulled her into a hug. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," she replied. And there, under the stars, in a simple house in a working-class neighborhood, they had something that all the money in the world couldn't buy. True love, built on honesty, respect, and compassion. The months continued to pass. Catherine and Nathan's life settled into a comfortable routine. She kept working, not out of necessity, but because she enjoyed it. Nathan divided his time between managing his investments and working on community projects. Together, they created a foundation to help young people from the neighborhood gain access to technology education. The same path that had changed Nathan's life. Mrs. Irene helped manage it, her wisdom and community connections proving invaluable. One day, 2 years after the wedding, Catherine received another unexpected phone call. This time it was Richard, her father. "Sweetheart," he said, and his voice was broken. "Can I see you?" Catherine hesitated. Unlike Martha, who had only called when she learned about the money, Richard had remained silent all this time. "Why?" she asked. "Because I miss you," he admitted, "and because I made a terrible mistake letting your mother convince me to abandon you." 2 years, Dad, Catherine said, the pain still fresh. 2 years without a word. "I know, and I have no excuse," Richard replied. "But I'd like a chance. Just one. To see you. Meet your husband. Maybe start over." Catherine talked to Nathan about it. "It's your decision," he said. "But remember, you don't owe him anything. Only do it if you really want to." "I think I do," Catherine admitted. "Not for the family to go back to how it was. That's never going to happen. But to have some kind of peace, some kind of closure." She arranged to meet Richard at a cafe. He arrived looking older, more tired, and when he saw Catherine, tears immediately filled his eyes. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." They sat down, and an uncomfortable silence hung between them. "Your mother and I separated," Richard finally said. Catherine was surprised. "What?" "About 6 months ago," he explained. "I found out she's been having an affair with a business partner for years, and when I confronted her, she said she'd only stayed with me for the money." The irony of the situation was not lost on Catherine. Martha, who had criticized her marriage so much, had built her own on financial interest. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Richard said. "It was freeing in a way. I realized how much time I wasted trying to keep up appearances, trying to please everyone but myself." "And Victoria?" "She's living on her own now, working, making her own choices." Richard gave a small smile. "You were an inspiration to her, you know." Catherine didn't know what to say. "I was wrong about you," Richard continued, the words clearly difficult. "I let my fear of social judgment become more important than my daughter, and there's no excuse for that." "No, there isn't," Catherine agreed. "But I'd like to try to make it right," he said. "If you'll let me. I don't want to be part of your life the way I was before, but I'd like to be present in some way, to meet my son-in-law, to be something." Catherine thought about it. Part of her wanted to refuse, to protect herself from more possible pain. But the bigger part, the part that had learned about forgiveness and second chances from Nathan, knew what to do. "All right," she said. "We can try. Slowly, no pressure. And if it doesn't work, no hard feelings." "No hard feelings," Richard agreed, clearly relieved. In the following months, Richard began to be a part of Catherine and Nathan's life in a modest way. He visited occasionally, helped with some of the community projects, met Mrs. Irene, and developed a genuine respect for the lady. "Did she raise you all by herself?" he asked Nathan one day. "She did," Nathan confirmed. "That's impressive," Richard admitted, "and humbling. I had everything and couldn't be a good father. She had so little and raised an exceptional man." "It's never too late to change," Nathan said gently. "To be better." "Thank you," Richard replied, "for giving an old fool a chance." Victoria also started visiting more often. She had begun dating someone, a public school teacher who loved his work despite the low salary. It was clear she had learned her lesson about what truly mattered. "He's wonderful," she told Catherine one day. "Kind, funny, passionate about what he does, and he doesn't care that I came from a wealthy family or any of that. I'm happy for you," Catherine said sincerely. "You saved me," Victoria confessed. "When I saw you choosing happiness over expectations, it gave me the courage to do the same." 3 years after the troubled wedding, Catherine discovered she was pregnant. The news brought joy, but also fear. What would it be like to raise a child? What kind of world were they bringing this baby into? "We'll do our best," Nathan reassured her, "and teach our child about what really matters. Love, kindness, fairness." "Not about money," Catherine teased. "About financial responsibility," Nathan corrected with a smile. "About using resources for good, but never about measuring human worth by a bank account." Mrs. Irene was glowing at the news that she would be a grandmother. "I'm going to spoil that child," she declared, "but I'm also going to teach about hard work and values." "The perfect combination," Catherine said. The baby was born early the following year, a girl they named Eleanor, and when Catherine held her for the first time, all the hardships she had been through seemed worth it, because they had led her right there, to that perfect moment. Eleanor grew up surrounded by love, not in a luxurious mansion, but in the simple house in the working-class neighborhood, with neighbors who treated her like family, with a grandmother who spoiled her but also taught her, with parents who showed by example what it meant to live with purpose. When Eleanor was 5 years old, Catherine and Nathan decided to do something special. They renewed their vows again, this time with their daughter present. "Why do you do this?" Eleanor asked with the natural curiosity of a child. "Because love deserves to be celebrated," Catherine explained, "and because we want you to know that our love is strong, it's real, and it's forever." The ceremony was even simpler than the second one. just the closest family and a few friends. But it had something special, a sense of completeness. When it was Catherine's turn to speak, she looked at Nathan and then at Eleanor. 5 years ago, she began, we renewed our vows for the first time. But today is different. Today we're not just celebrating our love for each other, but the love we created together, she pointed to Eleanor, this incredible little girl who teaches us every day about what truly matters. Nathan added, and I promise, he looked at Catherine and then at Eleanor, to keep being honest, to keep working every day to be worthy of the love you give me, to keep using what I have to make a difference in the world. After the ceremony, as they watched Eleanor play with the other children in the neighborhood, Richard approached Catherine. You built something beautiful, he said, something real, and you taught me that it's never too late to change, to be better. Thank you, Dad, Catherine said, and this time the word Dad brought no pain, just acceptance. The end. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Do you think Catherine made the right choice in forgiving Nathan? Can you understand his side of things too? Share your opinion in the comments with your honest thoughts. And if you've been through something similar, tell us about it. We'd love to hear your story. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave your like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.